speak as someone I had a brief encounter with in Nashville several years ago. We met, and man, I just love the guy. He's just such an interesting person. Got a great perspective on stuff. Got a great sobriety. He's bulked up a little bit over the last couple of years, and maybe cleaned up a little bit. But yeah, I don't want to take up any more time. Rob, looking good, man. Happy New Year. Thanks for agreeing.
Yeah, for sure. It's good to see friends from all over the country. It's what a special thing Zoom gets to be for us. First of all, what a tough act to follow, that article, right? Like how good is that? Like to try and add to that is just ridiculous. So I'm just going to share a couple stories from my experience, and hopefully somebody on the call will be able to profit from them in some way or another. Actually, let me start right here. Like I always want to start in the same place, and it's to say this, that I absolutely love Alcoholics Anonymous. Every good and decent and wholesome thing that's ever existed in my life has existed in my life because of the power of God as manifest through AA. And I'd be remiss if I didn't point that out right away. I've read this article several times in the last couple of days. I don't know, I think I was trying to prepare in some way to have something good to say, and it really didn't work. So, but in reading it, a couple things, a couple experiences sort of jumped out at me, and so I'm just going to share those with you. The first one started to take place or started to unfold in my life about 5 years ago. My wife and I were having an argument, which wasn't completely unusual at that time. Totally unusual these days, but at that time wasn't unusual. And I don't remember what we were arguing about. I'm sure that she was right. You know, but I remember standing in my bathroom, and I was yelling at her and she was yelling at me, and I was getting like more and more desperate feeling. I wasn't angry as such. I was feeling more and more desperate. And blacked out. And it's something that isn't totally unusual. You know, I have had the experience of losing time many times. But on this particular night, I blacked out. And when I came to, I had her pinned to the wall by her throat. And it's obviously something I'm not proud of. And as I came to and realized what I was doing, it broke me. It like right in half, it broke me. And so I did the only thing I know to do. I picked up the phone and started calling people, and I called my sponsor and he didn't answer. And I called another guy and he didn't answer. And I called a third guy and he didn't answer. I called a fourth guy, and even though he was 2 time zones ahead of me, he answered the phone. And I told him what I had done. I told him what had happened. And you know, he walked me through a process that night on the phone of a quick kind of inventory type of thing, and got me to a point where the next day I could make amends, where I could make an approach. And I made that approach, and I was asked for, the only thing I was asked for was to get help. And honestly, when I was asked that, I had no idea what that would even look like, because I didn't know what was wrong with me. And, you know, left with that question is to be with that question, what is wrong with me, is a desperate place to be, and something that I'm familiar with. That's kind of the first question that ever existed in my mind. And you know, this particular day, being asking that question, I got open to doing some things that I had never been open to before. I got open to getting some outside help, doing some therapy, stuff like that. And I started down this process where over the course of about 2 years, I was able to access things in my mind which I had never been able to access before, and was taken to a point where I was able to write inventory on, I mean, I'll just be honest with you guys, like be able to write inventory on a string of sexual assaults that I had been the victim of, that I had never been able to put pen to paper on. Not because I didn't want to, but because they literally didn't exist in my mind. I couldn't bring them to my mind with sufficient force so that I could do anything about them. Writing that inventory and sharing that inventory transformed my life. Part of that process also, which I kind of just glossed over, is I received a mental health diagnosis that, I'm one of those that suffer from grave emotional and mental disorders, and I didn't know it. When I was 19 years old, I was committed to the state hospital in Illinois, and a state psychiatrist went before a judge and said I'd never be able to live in the outside world again. And at 19 years old, I felt like the doors of hell had clanged in on me. But the story I had always run after I got out was that I had just been young, I had just been an untreated alcoholic, that I was fine, that I didn't really have this mental condition. Fast forward to 4 years ago now, 3 years ago now, having to come to terms with the outside issue and the abuse, the trauma, unlocked for me a level of peace and serenity that I had never known. I don't know why exactly that article kind of kicked that memory back up. I don't know exactly, except to say that I think, the idea of unhealthy dependency, like one of those dependencies being my dependency on the conditions of my life to be suitable to me so that I didn't react in ways that were dangerous. Because at my core, up until that point, under the right circumstances, I was a very dangerous person, as evidenced by the experience I just shared with you guys. It brings to mind another experience in another realm of life, in my work life. Now I'm like about 5 years ago, I had a job. It was a great job, really. I mean, it was a job that paid a lot of money. It had a lot of esteem to it. It had a lot of influence and power to it. In fact, everything in sort of the outside realm would indicate that it would be the kind of career you'd want, the kind of job you'd want. And yet I was dying on the inside doing it. The more effort I put towards making it appear successful, the more effort I put towards trying to fit myself into the box of this career, the more separated I became from my true self, from who I actually am. I started to say this prayer about 5 years ago. I started to ask God a simple prayer: put me where I can be most useful to you. And I really believe that through that prayer, I began to lose that position. I ultimately left that career and started down a path of trying to find my place of maximum usefulness. Like leaving aside the dependency on the outside recognition, because that career gave me lots of recognition. And I really depended on that recognition to so that I could feel whole on the inside. And the more I depended on that recognition, the more recognition it took to get that pop. The more recognition I got, the more acculturated I got to it, the more, right? It's just that kind of vicious cycle. The more I got, the more I needed. And leaving that career felt very, very scary, for a number of reasons. I mean, some of them were just practical financial reasons, but it felt very scary to walk away from all the esteem, especially, I mean, it's going to sound juvenile, but as a man in my 40s, it sounds a little juvenile, but really the esteem from my parents and my parents' recognition of them being proud of me was something obviously you kind of always want, and it was something that I had achieved or that had been achieved for me. And it was something that I had come to rely on a great deal. And so walking away from that was really, really scary. Where it's left me is in a position now where I'm in a career now where I don't have any of that recognition. I don't have any of the I don't have the financial remuneration. I don't have the influence that I used to have. But what I do have is a career where I'm able to help people every single day. Every single day is about serving my fellows. I work with kind of the lowest of the low. I work with, I'm a social worker, and I work with severely mentally ill patients. I work with people that pretty much society has written off. And I get to, a daily basis, the fact that people with so little, like really so little, show up every single day for their lives. And it's just an honor and a privilege to be able to work with them and to be able to show up for them as they're trying to show up in their lives. And again, I think that the essay, for a couple of things kind of really stuck out to me or as parallels in that essay. One is the dependency that I had on the recognition and the financial remuneration, and the fact that the more I depended on it, the worse matters got. But then on the other hand, being in a position now where it really is about service, and I get to bring a spirit of service into every activity throughout the day, allows me to be able to walk away always feeling satisfied. And I think, to me, that's the real lesson of a life of service. Is a life of service is not about me. It's about the other. It's about God's other kids. I'm trying to think of how to put into words what I'm feeling right now. I'm so grateful for the life that I've been given. I'm so grateful for the ability to serve other people. That was the last thing on my mind when you guys found me. It was literally the last place I would have ever looked for it. I spent my entire life trying to manage the conditions of my life so that they would be acceptable to me. I spent my entire life trying to manage something that I could never get my arms around. Right? I had a sponsee earlier today telling me he can't square the circle. And that's how it felt. Like I was trying to square a circle my whole life. And that's an impossible task. It's an impossible task for somebody like me to try to live in a way that serves me. My life needs to be a reflection of service of other people. And I think, ultimately that's where Bill gets to in this essay is that it's really about a life of service and how do I become more effective in a life of service? And I don't think I have anything to add to what he said in terms of that, just a recognition that that's what I really take out of the essay. I have kind of a third experience that I want to share, but I'm having a hard time putting it into format in my mind so I can spit out of my mouth. It's very current. About 3.5 weeks ago now, I think it was 3.5 weeks ago, it might have been 2 weeks ago, a couple weeks ago, let's say that, my wife gave me some really pointed feedback, which, like, what a miracle that is, that she was able to just be gut level honest with me about something and the only reaction was, how can I be helpful? But the pointed feedback was that she had become aware that I was being controlling of her time. And I wasn't aware of it at all when she told me. She shared it with me, and it was like, I couldn't have been more unaware or blind, talk about a blind spot. And, I do Steel on Steel, and in Steel on Steel, we talk a lot about blind spots. And what a blind spot. She she comes to me and says, I'm really scared to share this with you. I'm really worried to share this with you, but I feel like I need to. And I feel like you're being really, really controlling my time. And she gave me some examples of what that looked like. And, you know, at first when she told me, my initial reaction was sort of disbelief. My initial reaction was not to take it quite as seriously as she was sharing it. And my mind immediately tried to minimize the impact that it was having on her. So I did what I do. I said a quick prayer and I tried to be open-minded. I tried to listen, and I ultimately took it really seriously. And so I called my sponsor and I shared it with him, and he said, well, great, add that to the watch list, right? You know, in 10-step, we watch for selfishness, dishonesty, and fear. And now I'm watching for selfishness, dishonesty, fear, resentment, and trying to control my wife in her time. And as I began to watch it over the last couple of weeks, I became very painfully aware that is a deep, deep fear. I have a deep, deep fear that she's going to leave. In fact, I have a deep, deep fear that all of you are going to leave at some point, that I'm going to be cast aside and left alone. And when that fear gets activated in my personal relationship with my wife, my response is to try to manage her and her time. And I'd love to sit here and tell you I've already written that inventory. I haven't. I've been putting it off because I'm a bad student. I'm like a C student in this thing. But you know, I'm getting to that inventory here shortly. And now that I've said it to all you guys, I'm going to be held accountable, which is beautiful. And I'm really interested to see what that inventory points out to me, because the part I'm aware of is painful enough and distasteful enough. But, you know, again, unhealthy dependency. I'm depending on my wife, obviously, and her whereabouts and what she's doing to soothe this fear in me. So in effect, rather than relying on God, I'm relying on her. And so I'm putting her in a position that's untenable for her. She's just a person. She can't be in the position of God in my life or anyone else's. So it's an unfair thing that I'm doing to her right away. It's unfair and it's unkind. And every time I've seen it come up over the last couple of weeks when I've done my nightly review, was I loving and kind towards all? No, I wasn't. I was unkind to my wife by trying to make her into God. It's exciting to me and sort of deeply exciting to me that we have a process that we can adhere to or that we can implement that is effective for anything that comes up, right? It's effective for if I'm stuck in a job that I don't understand why it's not getting any better. I don't understand why I'm feeling worse and worse doing it. It's effective in a position in my personal life if it's pointed out to me that I'm doing something that's hurting somebody. It's effective to me, obviously, to get over drinking. It's effective no matter what I want to apply it to. It will solve that problem, right? It will revolutionize my way of life and my way of thinking such that I'm able to rely on God at an even deeper level. And ultimately, I think that's what Bill's talking about, right? Is Bill's talking about a deeper reliance upon God. And I'm just really, as I sit here right now, I'm just really, really grateful for that process. And I'm really, really grateful for a vessel like me. I wouldn't know what to do without it. And I'm really, really grateful for you guys. And I think that's it.
Thanks, Rob. That was beautiful, man. Hey, the last time we met or we had talked, you said we were having a conversation. You said you had been working or considering the word tolerance and kind of filling that's like, you know, filling the space for somebody or giving space where it was. Could you Could you talk a little bit about that? I loved when you were talking about it. I don't know if you remember.
I don't remember that at all.
Oh yeah, it was awesome. Anyway,
I'll have to think about it and get back to you, Sam.
Yeah, you had contemplated the word tolerance, and you said for you that you had found that it depends on what somebody needed in that space of interaction with you.
Like, I see. Yeah. So it's about being as big or as small as you need to be, right?
Yeah.
If somebody's really small, you need to be big in that circumstance to meet them. It's sort of like a math equation. If they're running at 20%, I need to run at 80%. And if they're running at 80%, I need to run at 20%. The tolerance was really about meeting people where they're at in that sense. Something like that.
Yeah, that was beautiful, man. That's good stuff. So what we do is we're not done with you yet, Rob. You got to call on a couple or you call on 2 or 3 people on here. I know you know some people, and then we'll open it up to whoever wants to share.
Okay. Well, I would first of all love to hear from Kurt Zimmerman.
Oh yeah, Kurt.
Hey, it's really good to see you, Rob. You know, I shared last week, so I kind of like to listen tonight. But I really appreciated what you brought to this meeting tonight, and it's really good to see you, buddy.
Yeah, you too, sir. How about Lee Lowell?
Hi, I'm Lee. I'm an alcoholic. Yeah, thank you, Rob. That was real. And like that's what keeps me here, you know, like I guess something that's been occurring to me lately is that this Zoom effect, I really need that message of depth and weight to hold my interest, you know. It's like when we had 3D meetings, I guess there's a couple here in Portland, but when we had 3D meetings, I would sit and I would get quiet and I would pay attention and sit through the whole meeting regardless of the speaker, because the alcoholics around me, they're watching, and the newcomer is there, and it's just the level of engagement that kept me accountable. But you know, it's been 8 months of Corona, and you know, maybe I've been to a dozen meetings, and you know, every once in a while, it's probably been more than that, but not too much more. And every once in a while, I hear that message and really get that reminder of why I'm here. You know, there's alcoholics out there that are doing a whole lot worse than I am, you know, and where my heart lied for a long time is just sitting across the table and just looking into the eyes of another guy and you know, trying to show him what I do, you know, and just trying to understand better how to help with that, you know. And I've really struggled with that lately. You know, it's really it's been some of my own ego getting in the way. It's been some laziness on my part, you know, and it's something I really I guess it's an area lately I've really wanted to bring God into my life, you know. Yeah, thank you again, Rob. I'm gonna pass on that though. Thanks.
Thanks, Lee. How about Brian Percock?
I'm glad you called on him. I was going to call on him last week, and we ran out of time.
That was fun. Thanks, Rob. It was good. Good to hear you. You brought me back to a time right in the middle, and I'm sorry I look like the Unabomber guys. I really do. But it's just I'm on my porch. I find myself wanting to be outside way more than inside, and I'm quarantined right now. So anyway, it's good to hear you, Rob. I love you, and I love Amy. I'm super excited for you guys, the new adventure coming up. And it made me think about the times, and maybe this is, I don't know if the time correlated, but when I would come to Tucson to work, you would come over to my hotel and we'd sit on the back patio. You were sharing some of that stuff that was going on your mental stuff. And so I really appreciate your transparency, you know. And, you know, something happened last week when I was listening to Carla, and I love Carla. She was great last week. And well, I've always liked her, but when she talked about a new level of forgiveness, see, I have this idea that I know where I'm at with certain things, which is a lie. You know, in the last 3 years, everything's been stripped from me. I was a CEO, that got stripped from me. My marriage, I gave that away. You know, everything that I thought was like what made me got stripped away. And I didn't know that. I thought that. So when you're left with all that, the seeking of God has been, well, it was troublesome and intense, and it's been amazing, all wrapped together. But what happened about 4.5 months ago, my other brother died, you know, in Tucson. He was on a ventilator. I don't know if it was COVID or what, but he never got the ventilator. I remember not having any emotions about it. This is a brother who molested me, got me high when I was 10. I wrote a lot of inventory about this. And when Carla said a level of forgiveness that we don't understand, I called my sponsor and I said, my brother died and I have no feelings, which if you know me is like ridiculous because I have feelings about anything. And he said, well, it'll come when it comes. And then someone challenged me, this friend of mine, she said, you know, you may want to consider that you've never truly forgiven your brother, how you think you have, but you haven't. And I started taking that into meditation. And then all of a sudden, you know, it hit me coming out of, a week and a half, 2 weeks ago, I just came out of my morning rituals and I broke down around my brother. And I realized, because during that process, I started asking God to please show me if that's true. And what I realized is I hadn't forgiven him. And I think I have, you know. And so there's this, and this ties in for me around emotional sobriety. I believe that because I don't hate him anymore, I forgive him. But then there's a level of forgiveness that I was able to get to. And then I realized it's too late. You know? So this journey is just amazing. And I love transparency and I love authenticity. And I love hearing from people who will share their brokenness, even with long sobriety, because that's the truth. It's not like kumbaya and we're all great. I mean, there's some serious struggles. And so I appreciate that. And I appreciate Sam. And there's so many people on here that I love. My current relationship with God is at a level where I just love everybody. I'm just at a place where I'm matching calamity with serenity. Life is not how I want it. And, but I know God is good. God is real. So I'm grateful to be sober. Thanks again, Rob.
Thanks, Brian. How about David Murray?
Hello, everybody. My name is David. I'm an alcoholic. Rob, it was really good to hear you. And this meeting's been great so far. I really get out a lot out of meetings where there's a level of honesty about like the more darker side of alcoholism. I certainly related to your story as far as having some PTSD along with my alcoholism, and when I did my writing, having to take a look at some of the violent things that I did, and just hearing you talk, like there's another side to that. Like we have a process where, we can really look at those things, figure out, what caused us to act like that and let go. And it certainly seems like you've done that. And I appreciated how you talked about the contrast between two jobs. It's really good. I don't know how other newcomers feel, but when I came in here and I saw folks that had like great jobs and, they were making money and they had a nice car. Like I was like, oh, that's recovery. That's exactly what I want. I want to be just like that guy. Now a little shy of 10 years into this journey, I realized like that's so far from what has made me happy, where I found relief. And just, talking about like how that stuff really doesn't matter, right? It's an inside job. was just really good to hear. It was very refreshing. You know, the level of honesty you share with is, you can actually, like, even though we're on Zoom, like, it actually, like, I could feel it, you know, which was awesome. And then I'll end with this. I really related to you talking about wanting to manage your wife's behavior, want to manage your wife's life. I so do that sometimes, like my expectation for how I want her to behave. The good news is that, you know, unlike a couple of years ago, I put a lot of work into my inventory. I'm actually going through the work again right now. I live in Massachusetts, and I went through the steps with a sponsor, and they have a process they call Big Book Step Study here too, which, you know, it seems like a little bit more writing, but, you know, I'm looking forward to a second spiritual experience. But I really catch myself with that now. You know, I really, like, try not to base my happiness on, you know, it's usually people closest to us that our alcoholism really, you know, like, you know, we notice it, like, you know, as far as, like, you know, I don't know, just the people closest to you experience the symptoms of your alcoholism the most. You know, and I've definitely come to a point through a lot of hard work, you know, through talking to my sponsor, from doing writings, coming to meetings like this, where, you know, when I start, like, getting frustrated, like this morning, we filed for taxes separately because she has an old school loan. And she said, like, she checked off, like, the married box, and, like, all of a sudden in my head, I'm like, oh no, you know, the financial insecurity, like, you know, I'm gonna get bad credit and all this stuff. And like, all she did was simply, when she went to get her forms from her employer, she checked off married. It was nothing. It was nothing. And I was able to take a deep breath and take that pause that we learned about in the 11th step, and know that it was something inside of me that I had to figure out. But what I'm getting at is, like, you know, it's still a good ways into this journey. Like, my first response is usually not correct. And, like, anything that creates, like, a strong negative emotion, I immediately go to, like, all right, I have to breathe. This is something that I'm going to figure out, whether it's, you know, in 30 seconds, or whether it takes me talking to my sponsor, talking to other alcoholics, talking to me like this. And I try not to manage my wife's life, but I was laughing because I had that experience this morning. But really good to be here. Great to hear everyone. You know, physical sobriety is necessary, but once you get that, emotional sobriety is where it's at.
All right. You want to open it up? Does anybody like to share? We can just raise your hand in the participants box. See if we got anybody raising their hand. Nobody ever wants to raise their hand in this meeting, so I got to pick on people. What about Dawn?
I'm Dawn. I'm alcoholic.
Dawn.
Thank you for sharing. Your experience was really good to hear and very honest. I agree with the sentiment that your honesty and transparency came through Zoom, and I appreciate that, because sometimes Zoom meetings are a little distant from me, but I like this one a lot, and I've particularly liked listening to you. I think the thing that I can talk about that you said that really, I wrote it on a piece of paper. It says, I manage the conditions of my life to suit me, and when they don't turn out that way, you know, I somehow feel betrayed by the whole circumstance. and just over the past little while, a lot of the conditions of my life have shifted in ways that were completely unexpected to me, and that are relevant to, you know, how I'm looking at where I'm going forward in my life, I guess. But I like the idea of what he said, you know, the removal of faulty dependencies, and, you know, what I think that I'm going to need for me to be happy in my condition, you know, and my condition is actually alcoholism. It's not my life. And but I have ideas about what I think would be good for me, or good for me and everybody else. You know, I'm that girl, you know, trying to run the show and everybody be happy. And over the past few weeks, I've had a lot of those ideas just shattered, broken at depth, that this is not your reality. And delusions that have been completely just taken aback by the changes that have been presented to me. I read some other material wherein the author talks about not surrendering, but being surrendered. That the state of my spiritual emptying out has become so relevant that I just stand there and look around my life and say, wow, I guess this is it. And when I'm in that state, it is a state that is full of promise. And I stopped trying to manage the conditions of my life at that point, and I just, walk forward. And I was doing an art project, and the last thing that I put in the art project was the idea of a quiet place in the bright sunshine. And for me, to want to be, because I also identify fully with that need for recognition. And for me to enjoy the idea of a quiet place in the bright sunshine instead of a grand stardom on the big stage is just profound spiritual change. And sometimes I'm lucky enough to be impressed by this program one more time, and the freedom that it offers, if I'm willing to say, yeah, this too comes under the category of all in my life, and I don't hold on to things. I appreciate your talk. I appreciate your honesty. I appreciate that, because we don't come from well places, and a lot of us have experienced a lot of damage, trauma from the people around us. And it's always reassuring to know that I'm not the Lone Ranger everywhere I go. Thank you.
Thanks, Dawn.
You want to call on somebody, Don?
Sure, I'll do that. I want to hear from Chris Est, our co-host.
Oh, yeah.
Thanks,
Yeah.
Dawn. And yeah, thank you so much, Rob, for your share. I think that, I think the thing that really was resonating with me when you were talking about, you're talking about the work stuff, and I've sort of been in the same. I'm in a sort of a helping profession where I'm working with a lot of people who are in a, involved in the criminal justice system and dealing with drug addiction, and just sort of at, probably a lot of crossover there in terms of probably a lot of the, and I think that for me, just being able to, so I will find myself so often just getting sort of caught up in these storylines in my head about, and the more I can just have that ability to stop and pause and shift it towards how can I be useful, it's sort of amazing how just on a very day-to-day level, even just, being able to kind of show up for the work just becomes so much easier, just on a very practical level, just by having that sort of shift in perception about it. So, because I've gone through all kinds of things where I'm thinking, maybe I'm in the wrong job and I need to change this and change that. And a lot of what you were talking about in terms of just, if I can just kind of grab hold of these conditions and just get them lined up the right way, then I'll feel okay. But, I found a lot of, a lot of that, the serenity and also just what it talks about in the book of just just being more effective, just being able to sort of, when we're not sort of trying to, that section where it talks about, just when we're not trying to arrange everything to suit ourselves, that, that we can find ourselves, being able to sort of move through our day a lot more efficiently. So, yeah, I don't know. That's kind of what's coming for me. And I appreciate everything you had to say.
Man, I'm glad. Thanks, Chris. I'm glad you raised your hand, Jeff, because I was waiting. I was getting ready to call on you here in a second, man. I'd love to hear from Jeff.
Sure, I'm Jeff. I'm an alcoholic. Rob Campbell, I love you and I love your spirit. Rob remembers me when I was like, I don't know, 2 days sober or something. So that was 18 years and some change ago. And we've got to shepherd each other through this life. And it's good to see you here tonight. And good to see Amy in the room monitoring the situation. So I don't know. There were things I've learned before sometimes that the bearing and significance of them from my past life kind of came into this life, and there's a lesson in that. And one of them, I remember being in EMT school and going to be a paramedic and learning about, a pneumothorax lung and all this. But one of the things I remember was we learned about shock in EMT, and when you get hit by a car, you go into shock, and they told us what that was. And what it is something happens to you and your body says, oh my God. And it takes all the blood and it circulates it heart, lungs, brain, heart, lungs, brain. That's why you go pale, why you turn white. There's no blood getting to your skin. There's also no blood getting to your appendix, your liver, your other vital organs, and there's plenty of them. And so, the thing is, though, is it's trying to help you, right? It thinks it's trying to help you, and actually it's hurting you, gravely so, as a matter of fact. So the paramedic's job is to get you out of that condition, or you're going to die, because your appendix and your stomach and your liver and your kidneys, those things need blood. And I say that because I think of the ego as being the same way, right? And I had the experience recently where I had whatever, it's not an AA meeting, but I had been a non-smoker forever and slowly went back to some chewing tobacco and then went back to chewing tobacco and smoking both. Had been doing it for a year, and the best my spiritual life got was a little gray, right? And so 8 weeks ago, I've been hemming and hawing. I kept having this intuitive thought, just quit, man. And I had a fixed idea of how difficult that was going to be, but I just stopped one day. I just stopped. And I got to tell you guys, this vibrant color and bright creativity. And I mean, I was chewing gum till it felt like my jaw was going to break, but my life got real vibrant and colorful, and everything came flooding back in. And I was in, as Bill said, in a quiet place in bright sunshine. And Kurt and Mary Thayer and Don were talking a few weeks ago, and Don gave us this prayer that the other Don had given him. And I just got in that prayer, those 3 steps across that river and stepping into that garden, except in my garden, all the flowers were red. And I was just grooving in that garden in meditation, and my spiritual life's on fire. And I was in a bright place for quiet sunshine for like 4 weeks, and then for reasons of still maybe not known to me, but that ego, right? It always just finds a way to reassemble at a deeper level. You should be devastated over politics and what's going on right now. And what about this? And what about that? And slowly the shine wore off, right? I have a condition called alcoholism, as it turns out, that requires a daily treatment for it called On Awakening, as it turns out. And you guys, I can step on my air hose with anything or nothing going on. And I was very aware of it at that time when I felt so close and so warm with God. And it was like, I just want to stay here with you and be with you and have it be this way and feel this way forever. And that's not to be. It's not how I'm built. It's not how the program works. It's not how I work. I generate my own fear, discord. I just come up with stuff and run with it and separate myself from that power over and over and over again. It thinks it's trying to help me, but all it does is scare me, and it makes me scared of you. And that's why I need this help in this program. Thanks for letting me share. Good to see you, Sam. So good to see you, Rob.
Good to see you, man. Hey, Jeff, call on somebody.
I will. Let me skim a couple of pages here and see. We got a lot. You know who never talks is Joel from Phoenix. How about Joel?
Joel.
Nice.
My name is Joel, and I'm a real alcoholic, and I've recovered from a seemingly hopeless state of mind and body. Yeah, I never really volunteer to talk. And yet I want you to call me. I read this book when I was a little kid, Dr. Doolittle, and there was this llama that had two heads. It was called a push me, pull you. And that's been my theme all my life. You know, I want you to call me, but I don't want you to call me. You know, one of the things I was thinking about when Rob was speaking, somehow when I listen to someone else speak, something hits me and I start relating about something in my past and stuff. And something he said related, I started remembering that as a little boy, I decided that I'm not going to depend upon people anymore. I had a mother that was an alcoholic, and she beat the hell out of me and said very cruel things to me. A father that abandoned me, and various experiences where people disappointed me. And I said, I'm just going to shut down, and I've had this armor around me. And it didn't really work that good, but I found liquor helped put up the walls a lot better. But then I also wanted this push me, pull you, you know, the affection and love of a woman, you know, so I had to like let down my guard and, you know, try and let people in and stuff. All that stuff really didn't work for many, many years. He also talked about therapy. I was in therapy for many years before I came into AA, even a few years afterwards. And I started to realize that it's okay to have feelings and let people in and bring down this armor and stuff like that. I discovered, you know, that what I was doing, that was another thing. I just had it. It's like really weird. I want to listen to the speaker, but at the same time, there's voices in the back of my head saying, "Oh yeah, this is what that reminds me of." And I realize that my allowing myself to be dependent upon other people was actually, or acknowledging that I had dependency on other people was actually a positive growth step, moving me out of that isolation and stuff. The problem is I tend to swing too much. I tend to, it's like all or nothing. I don't have any really good, realistic boundaries. And while I was sober in AA, I got hurt by a lot of people that I was dependent upon. And that brought me into Al-Anon. And then I realized powerless over other people. And that helped balance me for many, many, many years. I'm still a basket pet case. I love this kind of a meeting because I realize I'm not alone. You know, I'm broken, you know, but my brokenness is what brings me to God. You know, I think that's what Bill was saying in his essay, you know, that my real dependency needs to come to God. I just recently went through an emotional roller coaster. I found this poster about the Yahoos planning to go down to Washington with arms, and not only that, to circulate around all the capitals in the nation. So I was forwarding that post that everybody, with the idea that everybody needs to know that they got to be safe. And I got so much blowback. I think people thought I was promoting it and being a Nazi. And I said, oh shit. And I'm not going to say that word. It messed me up. It really messed me up emotionally. I said, how can people think that way? Don't they know me? No, they don't know me. They don't. Only people who I kibitz with, you know, and they talk about outside issues, they know where I stand politically, and never would have thought of that. So I said, I just got to take an action and turn over the results. So I issued an apology, and I took it to God this morning. Mickey M's gonna like this, because God doesn't talk to me, but I felt this inner voice while I was meditating. And it said to me, relax, Joel, I got this. And then I turn on the news and I see that law enforcement, FBI is coming after these SOBs, you know, the National Guard is out, all that kind of stuff. You know, and the thought that came to me was, I really need to learn how to pause. I went straight into reaction. I reacted immediately, and you know, out of fear. And I said, everybody needs to know and be safe and stuff. And I think I would have taken the time to pause and learn a good response, or rely more heavily on God to take care of the situation. I'd not have been put through that 24 hours of emotional roller coaster. But anyway, these kind of meetings, this kind of deep sharing is so healing. I really love that you, Sam, are doing this. And I think Tom started it, or I'm not sure how it got founded, but I'm not missing it since I found it. Thanks a lot for letting me share.
Thank you, Joel. Hey, were you calling somebody, Joel?
Oh, I love Mary Thea.
I was hoping you'd do that.
Hi there, Mary Thayer, alcoholic. Thanks, Joel. Love you too. Love you too. Rob, boy, when you were sharing, I was thinking about, it reflected back on my life, and I was in the corporate world, and I remember it was, you know, it fed all the externals in what I was doing, and I was miserable. I was just miserable. Every single day I was miserable. And I was a single parent, and the job was really a good job for a woman anyways, and the corporate world, especially in Maine, in a shipyard, for crying out loud. But I sent out a prayer similar to what you did. I said, God, all I know is that I don't know what you want me to be or do. But maybe it has to do with people, I don't know, but please help me. I really don't know. And at that time, my daughter finished her first master's degree. And right about that time, I heard that Elizabeth Kubler-Ross was speaking in Maine, and I went and heard her. And after that night, afterwards, I had one of those God zaps that I opened a newsletter of hers, and it advertised that college in New Mexico for death and dying. And who was raised to think that they want to go to school to study death and dying? But it was like this voice came to me and it said, this is what you'll do. And it was so interesting because when she'd come to Maine, she asked everybody in the audience to raise their hand if they were doing exactly what they wanted to do in life. And I remember I thought to myself, God, I'll be the only dope without my hand up. And hardly anybody raised their hand. That was fascinating to me. And then when I graduated from her school, her college there, she was the main speaker and I was the student speaker. And I was able to say, she asked that question, and today I could raise my hand that I'm doing what I think I want to do. And it's an entirely different thing when you find what God wants you to be instead of what society is telling you. And I too became a social worker, and it doesn't have a lot of money, property, and prestige with it, but boy, you can't buy nobody can give you what you get from that type of work and the privilege I've had in my career. I guess I always thought that I would retire from that, but that's not something I do. I mean, this is for the rest of my life. I talk to people about loss, and that brings up for me, I was listening to Brian when he was talking about forgiveness. And I sometimes think, and yourself with the blackouts of the emotions and stuff. And I often think there's such a difference between grief and self-pity. And two of the phases of grief is depression and anger. And I feel as though alcohol uses when we drank, we're either crying in our beer or we're throwing chairs at people or something. The anger is coming out, was released. But without that, sometimes we don't address the deep grief of some of the losses that we've received. And I'm grateful that I've worked the steps. I'm grateful that I'm not afraid now. That is things. One thing I can share with this is, I loved how you went from, a better demonstration of these principles in our respective homes, occupations, and affairs, and how you started with your home. And I had to start with being a parent with that and growing with that. And my prayer finally became, God, make me the mother you want me to be, not the one I think I should be. And so prayer again has continued to be part of anything that I do that brings me into some type of balance. It also reminds me the dependencies thing. On page 98, it says something to the effect, as long as our dependence is on others rather than God, there isn't going to be any real sobriety that's going on. And I have found that as long as I've been sober, I'm still just a seasoned beginner, because the things that have happened, Joel, as you said, the things that we are seeing now in our life externally are shocking to all of us, no matter what. And I'm fully aware that I heard Chuck Chamberlain say this, and I've kind of been brought back to the steps at a deeper, more basic level. And he said that the second step means mind your own business. And he says, if you can come to believe that there is a power that can restore you to sanity and sound thinking, then you can mind your own business. And that does not mean that I don't pause and have an opinion or a statement on where I'm at, but I respond versus react. And I can do that if I've got a God on board. If I don't have a God on board, I feel all alone and I react. So what area of my life am I agnostic is what I've found. And the places that I'm agnostic, it's usually where I'm not emotionally stable. And so that's like a 10th step in a way. Where am I not in a place of neutrality? So I so appreciated hearing you. Congratulations to you and your wife. I know there's a new angel arriving, and bless you. It's good to see you. Thanks for calling on me.
Thank you, Mary Thayer. Can you call on someone?
Oh, I suppose I could. Let's see. How about
And
you?
Happy New Year.
Barbara P. from Florida. Get off there and say hello.
Come on.
Come on.
I'm an alcoholic. I guess I don't have to say that here. My name is Barbara. Thank you, everyone, for your shares. It's been a very emotional meeting for me. And when that happens, I tend to, I used to shut down completely. Now I just get quiet. And to know me is to know that quiet is not my, natural state. But when you were talking about, all this darkness coming to light, and I was about 18 months into this new life when that happened for me. And it was my really first lesson in acceptance. I didn't have it with my behavior, but I had to first accept that what had happened had already happened. It was already true. And I've learned a couple things along the way. And one of them is some stories don't ever need to be told again. And because of what I just said, because they're already true. And that as an adult, part of my responsibility is to move forward, and how very difficult that has been for me, including in my 27th year. I got reminded, I don't know, it's just, my head's just, it's in a couple places. And I got my first COVID vaccine shot today. And my husband got his 2 days ago. And now we're going back on the same day to get our second shot. And I told the nurse it would be our first real date in 10 months. And so the gratitude I feel is immeasurable for me. I know who's in charge. I'm grateful. And I am working I don't want to say it that way. Anytime I see myself starting to interfere, I'm just grateful that I know what to do about it. I know who to call. And it's just, from an emotional standpoint, it's great to live in reality, to know what I can and cannot do, to know what's God's job and what my work is, and what a huge difference that is. It took me a while in sobriety to get a higher power because I didn't trust, and I still can put those walls up pretty fast. I'm a quick builder, but it doesn't do for me what it used to do for me, and so I'm happy to step away from it. And that's really, I just want to thank everybody. It's this is just emotionally charged for me, so thank you.
Thank you so much for sharing. Cassidy.
Hi everyone, I'm Cassidy. I'm a recovering alcoholic. It's really good to be here tonight, and it's really good to see some of your familiar faces. Wow, this meeting, the dependencies, I feel like there's been a lot of things in my life that have happened recently in regards to that. I kind of hit this point, and I was talking to my sponsor a couple weeks ago, I think, and just kind of like a lot of what people were sharing of like, I've had this wall up for so long, and I've been blocking people out and not allowing other people to be in an authentic relationship with me. And it's so funny. It's because like deep down, I desperately crave that. Like I want that love and like to connect with people so badly. But like, for some reason, I've realized now that I can't continue to allow my past to define who I am today and what my relationships look like. And I came to this point where I had this conflict with my roommate, and she's a part of this program too. And it's been such a blessing. But there were so many instances where it was like, oh, like I really need to build intimacy with my friends. And it was like, that was my next step. And of course, like in this program, it's like, I don't always want to do the work to hit that step because it's uncomfortable. It's change. Like, I don't want to change. It hurts. And we had a little bit of a scuffle, a disagreement on something. And there was that little piece of me that, like, I just did not want to be wrong. Like that pride was getting in the way and that ego was getting in the way. And I did a 10 step, and it's so funny. Like I can somehow like twist the 10 step just a little bit, just to make sure like that I'm still in a way that I'm still right. And, but then deep down, I still knew, I'm like, oh man, like God's still convicting me that I need to go further with this. So I did a second 10 step with someone else. And then I wrote inventory on it, and it was like, oh, why is this not going away? And it was like, because that little piece of me could not admit that I needed to take that extra step in building intimacy with this person. And it was like the last thing I wanted to do. And my sponsor just told me like, this is what people drink over. Like taking these little steps can be such a big, can be a part of a bigger picture. And like, I don't want to be that person who drinks again. And then I was like, I finally conceded, like, okay, like I will do this. And it was like, I apologize. And like, I didn't just apologize. Like I own my side of the street, and it was such a game changer, because the first time I apologized, but I never gave her room to say her piece. and to speak her mind while I just sit there and feel it. But then also offer like an intentional space to have that friendship and separate that from being roommates as well. I don't know. I've had such paralyzing dependencies on other people that I realized recently, like there's so much this deep selfishness in not allowing others, or not allowing myself to receive other people's love. Because I was always so unsafe. It was always such an insecurity in allowing people to love me because I didn't get that. But it's like, well, I can't keep assigning, because then I would assign, just automatically assign people as my mom or like other people who have hurt me in the past. And like, this isn't who God like wants me to be in relationships. Like, this is a two-way street. I have to put in the work, and I can't keep expecting these people to just do this work for me, because that was my expectation of like, well, no, it's their job to be intimate with me. I'm just going to sit back because it's too scary for me. And it's like, oh, wait a second. Like, that's part of my job too. And even in my relationship with God too, like, I have to meet him halfway or it's just not going to work. And it isn't working anymore. But anyway, even in regards to, relationships, like I don't even realize sometimes that I'm projecting my trauma in relationships. And I had a trauma response with someone trying to, in a way, set a healthy boundary with me. And I was just like, man, that's you, like, that's not me. I had a trauma response, and I didn't realize later, like, oh, wow, that's not okay. I can't keep bringing this into this anymore. And this was part of the 10 step in the inventory that I had written. And I was like, and I even said that, I brought this in here, and I need to change this. And like, that's not okay that you got this response from me. And like, I have to change that. But that's the cool place to be in, to have at least some sort of awareness of like, okay, how can I direct these feelings in a healthy way, but also make amends for it. But yeah, I don't know. It's just different. I've always put myself in the back seat of, expecting people to take care of me and rescue me. And like, God has so much more, for me and all of us. And like, he has like this identity for me, and this calling on my life. And I've always just been like, nah, that's not me. I got to do what everyone else tells me, because I'm feeling all this pressure from my family, from my friends. Like, I got to be a certain way to look good, feel good. But that's like not the case. Like, God's just been like, I have this other thing here for you. Like, it's whether or not you are saying yes to it. So I don't know. I'm just really grateful to be here and to just be on this journey, because it blows my mind every time, like, the miracles that God creates. And so thank you, everyone.
Yeah. What about my friend John Henman, or H? John H. What are you doing over there, man? How's your New Year, bud?
Hey, I'm John. I'm an alcoholic. Thanks. I'm over here. Some ladies knit. I build RC cars and play with little screws while I listen. So sometimes, gosh, the last 2 days, the last week, I've been trying to I took a week off from work, and that took like 4 days to even realize I could take a day off and stop moving. And now I'm trying to re-engage with the world in general. And that's been really tricky. I've gotten used to, I was able to do some stuff, including last week, helped to purchase my first new home. And that's been, it's right down the hall here, but this will be the second time I've moved in this building. And, the first time I moved here, my friend said, well, come and stay. We're in a band, and it was 6 years ago, and I came around the corner and something in my heart just said home, and somehow I'm going to live here. So I've been renting 2 places, and finally one popped up. But there's been some other things coming up with my family that have been pretty tricky on my mom's side lately. And, you know, I was sitting here thinking about what I would say if I was going to talk about this, if I got called on. And, you know, my mom's like a partially treated Al-Anon right now. And, you know, she was kind of ninja-ish, but now she's gone into partially treated. And it's bringing out things in me that I haven't seen before, because I want to help her and take care of her. And she's had a hell of a year with COVID. And she lives in Grand Lake, and her house, you know, her house didn't burn down, but the neighbors did. Her boyfriend's been diagnosed with some stuff. And I'm really just trying to stay in a place of like, how can I be in service to mom and do what she needs me to do? Not go drive to Grand Lake, pick them all up, get them to the hospital, sit there, do what we have to do, and all that stuff. And it's bringing up a whole nother side of me. And also taking that vacation, didn't realize how fast I was moving. You know, I hadn't taken a break since this COVID broke out, and God, a lot of stuff has happened. And I popped up with my head, and I was like, holy moly, my hair is long, my name's changed, I'm moving, I have a girlfriend, and you know, that's another piece of my life that's new too, that I'm learning how to navigate. And you know, by the grace of God, she celebrates 3 years today, and I know she's in this meeting somewhere, but I won't call her out, I'll spare her. But you know, that's been so cool to be in a relationship with somebody in the program and be able to speak the same language and understand that, you know, what I might say to somebody normal, you know, she gets it, and the other person might think I was crazy. So, and I've been trying to change up my morning meditation. You know, I'm trying to take a walk in the morning because I can't sit still. And I've been trying to sit still, and that's been really tricky lately. So it's just all by the grace of God, man, you know, and God for me is that voice in the middle of my chest that sounds like the most impossible thing to do, you know, and because my brain tells me I have 100,000 different solutions to any problem, but the one in my heart's always screaming, do this, and I always do it last. And it's the one that always like blows up my world into another direction. And it's amazing, you know, but I struggle with that reliance, you know. I like to think my plan is the B plan, but it's really the A plan. And then I'll go to God's B plan, you know. But my ego likes to tell me, no, God's first. He's telling you to do this. You know, it's like the whole squandering of squirrels up there. But anyways, I love this meeting, and I'm grateful to be here, and it's good to hear everybody's voice. And with that, I'll pass. Thanks.
Thank you. What about Jessica B? We've seen you on here a couple times. Never heard from you before.
I'm Jessica. I'm an alcoholic. This has been really incredible. Yeah, I got invited here last week, and I'm really enjoying the depth and weight. And one thing I wrote down that you said, Rob, was dependency on recognition. That's come up a lot recently. And I moved to Alaska a few months ago from the East Coast, and during COVID, I have no person and, you know, been to any in-person meetings, new job, everything's new, right? And here I am as an alcoholic, just kind of clawing and grasping onto some semblance of being recognized in a new job, in a new position. And when I don't get that right away, I found myself last week talking to my sponsor, talking about how I was going to quit my job. And, you know, like that's my first reaction when I'm not getting filled up and getting the ease and comfort from a boss or from a new coworker. So I like this reminder of, you know, how am I present? How am I showing up to work? What is my mindset? And you guys are reminding me, how can I be useful? How can I be of service? my job already is a position of service. So it's just so amazing that I can still act on ego there. I can still kind of get in the way. So I like that message. And then I want to just share this real quick. There's somebody just reached out to me in the chat privately who had lived where I lived back in Richmond years ago. And she has a contact here in Anchorage, Alaska. And she's going to put me in contact. So it's incredible how if I just get out of the way and just show up, here I am on this random meeting where you guys are all over the country and I still get hooked up and I still get what I need. I just think that's entirely the message of AA. I get what I need when I don't realize I need it. So I'm really grateful for it. I'm grateful for the message you guys are bringing. Thank you.
What about Lee and Jennifer in Santa Fe?
Hi, everybody. I'm Jennifer and I'm an alcoholic. This is Lee. Go ahead, Lee.
I'm Lee. I'm an alcoholic. Grateful to be here. What an incredible meeting. And thanks for the great lead, Rob. And the shares are always wonderful. I was thinking, I woke up this morning really dreading the day. And I'd signed up for a class, a Spanish class. When I first moved to Santa Fe, I took some Spanish classes and I thought that's something I should do. And so I finally got around to signing up again. And then I thought, I'm going to have to do homework. How am I going to find time to take my nap in the afternoon? This is just not what I want to do. But I went to the class and it was fabulous. It was great. And it just reminds me that I need to be careful not to follow my inclinations, but to do the right thing, do what's in front of me. So grateful to hear the message tonight, and I'll pass to Jennifer.
Jennifer, alcoholic, and such a great meeting. And honestly, Rob, your lead was awesome. I just really appreciated hearing you. And every other people have said it, but it's this kind of talk where you really let me see who you are, and everyone in this meeting seems really good at that. That I really do find healing, and I remember when I first came into the program, I'd never, ever heard people talk as openly and honestly as we do in this program. And I remember this young gal, she's talking about, like some of her behaviors. And I remember looking at her and thinking, I just want to take you over to one of my parents' cocktail parties and just wind you up and let you go. It's going to be, you're amazing. And that is really what has kept me coming back. And it's taken, it's just taken a lot of time and talking and inventories, I think, to, start to get a sense of who I am, without all of my various little personas showing up. I mean, I've got enough of them where I've started naming them. You just have to keep track, so I've got, cocky girl, super mom's a big one, because these are the different personas that will pop up and people react to them. Nobody likes to be spoken to out of a persona. So I've had people in the rooms help me, notice those and become more aware of those. I remember one point in my recovery, somebody pointed out to me that my higher power was 3 teenage girls. And they said, that's not good, and I was nuts. I was crazy. They were acting like teenage girls who came from alcoholism, let me tell you. And so I really needed to, I don't know. I mean, I don't know. I just needed to find people who could call me out, I think. Who could call me out and, and walk me through the steps. I'm not even sure I'm there yet, but I'm definitely functioning better today than I have prior to today. So just thank you, all of you, for talking so openly about who you are, because it's really, really great to hear. Thank you.
Thanks, Jennifer.
Thank you so much. Rob, we've got about another hour of this meeting, so I was wondering, I'm just kidding. Hey, do you want to, your face, man. So do you want to close us, or this is kind of how we close, but before we do that, I just want to see, is there anything you thought about that maybe you'd like to share while you were waiting or while you're listening?
No, it's just been a great meeting. I appreciate everybody. Appreciate
Yeah.
it.
Great share, man. Thank you so much. We really appreciate you. And the way we kind of do it is, since it gets a little jumbled up on Zoom with the delay, we kind of do an inner prayer. We just mute ourselves and go to our inner room and say the Lord's Prayer to ourselves. All right. Much love, everybody. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thanks,
Great
Sam.
meeting.
Thank you. Good to see everyone.
Thanks, Sam, and thanks, Rob.
Thank you.
Thanks, Rob.
Thank you, Rob. Great share.
Thank you, Rob and Sam.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Thanks, Rob.
Congratulations,
See you, Rob. Thank you.
Rob.
Thanks, Sam. Thanks, Rob.
Rob, great share.
Thank you,
Thank you,
sir.
Sam.
Thank you, guys.
Thanks, everyone. That was a awesome meeting.
Thank you.
Good night.